vehicle is important. One is that, and Elspeth touched on this morning, is that the cost and availability of capital is really tough in rural areas. And so having an incubator actually allows you to overcome market failures and provide resource efficiencies that you might not otherwise have. Also, it'll help in regional development efforts, generates jobs, increases the tax base, and demonstrates largely government commitment to small business. I think that's very, very key because it allows a very tangible way to demonstrate that commitment, and in a very, well, I would say easy way than perhaps some other types of initiatives and resources. And then really linked to, I think, the objectives of the Monieson Centre, it's a great vehicle to share knowledge and resources. All right, so why does it work? From the very nominal level of interviews that we've conducted, and it's actually about a dozen right now, I would say there are 4 key things that we're finding, and these are themes that are coming up in some of the interview data that we've evaluated. The big thing is this whole idea of shared fate. That people who are housed in the incubator have a shared purpose and a shared mission, but almost shared dependencies. And so coming as an organization theorist, for many, many years, one of the things we found is that people try to reduce dependencies on people. And when you have entrepreneurial organizations, young entrepreneurial organizations have huge dependencies on suppliers, on many, many other partners that they may engage in. But what we find here is a sense of shared fate, community that people feel, that they're almost facing something together, is very, very powerful. It's a powerful driver and motivator that pushes them to succeed. The other is that they're very passionate at what they do. They're extremely, extremely driven individuals. So by doing that, we know that they make time for their enterprise and their efforts, because busy people make time for things that they're highly passionate about. And we know that from everything we teach, and you see a lot of this passion there in that community. The third thing is that they have a sense of cultural sustainability. And what do we mean by that? A lot of effort gets put on environmental sustainability and economic sustainability. And what we're finding, and at least in regions like Prince Edward County, yes, it's not just wine, but there's a concern about agriculture, a concern about heritage, a concern about roots, a concern about culture going forward for the future as a driver for the community in more ways than simply tourism. The final thing we're finding is that there's also an appreciation for propinquity. That's the word. I got it out fast. If you say it very quickly, it comes out really well. All right, so propinquity is important. That's 2 in 5 minutes. Excellent. Is that it's this whole manufacturing of closeness, right? That people like people that they spend a lot of time with. And I think that's why rural incubation works, because as Greg said, in a city, you may run into people more frequently. In a rural context, you actually have to manufacture that. You have to manufacture opportunities for people to come together and spend time and have that collision of ideas. And how does that happen? That happens when you create and manufacture opportunities for people to have that bumping and that constant, frequent interaction that's necessary for this to work. Okay, so key resources. And this is something that we're right now sort of a little bit challenged with, because one is that we know for incubation to work, you need a critical mass of ideas, but also critical mass of tenants. And we're having a hard time trying to figure out what is that threshold level, right? Like how many is enough to have in an incubator to actually have those good ideas flow? The other thing we find is that you need 2 things that are actually quite at odds with each other. You need trust, but you also need diversity. I mean, you need trust because people need to share those good ideas. But diversity, you also need because you want that collision of ideas. And so how do you manufacture trust at the same time as you manufacture diversity without it, trading off with each other to the point that it's not effective? And so for that, what we've seen is we bring our ideas from urban incubation and from the space in Toronto that we've been studying, is that you need a heck of a lot of connections, you need mentoring, but you also need animation and convening, right? You need curation, you need people to care about it, And that's why in Elspeth's case this morning, when she was talking about the founder, that's very, very critical. You need someone that's, you know, highly charismatic, highly motivated, that's going to be there and make sure that the trust evolves, but the diversity also comes in. So I'd love to hear from you as to what you think a critical mass or a critical threshold would be. Because in a couple of them that we studied, there's only 4 tenants. And you know, is 4 enough to be really moving it forward? And how should that growth occur? How do we scale these incubators up so that they can achieve that critical mass? And then the services, I think it's really obvious that we know that a lot of sharing of services. For us, working in this research, and you know, Wren is truly the expert in this, is that we really see that this is a rich, multicultural, multi-sector collaborative context. There we go. And that for us, the other insight is that we see that there's a sustainability imperative in rural economies. I mean, I grew up in Prince Edward Island, and thinking back to what's happened there, they've really skewed on the tourism side and less so on the cultural sustainability heritage side. And so I think that there's huge, huge opportunities because people value, as Nirvana mentioned this morning, things like authenticity, heritage, genuineness. And how can rural communities not only continue to reap the benefits of that, but leverage it into the future? So that's what we're doing. Thank you.
So Tina has asked that you provide her with some input, and Wren also, I know, is listening. Your comments and your questions are welcome. Please, Diana.
Comment and question. I thoroughly enjoyed it and I'd like to hear about it more. My question is, demonstrates government commitment to small business. Can you elaborate on that for me?
Well, I think it's a specific initiative, and right, governments can provide subsidies, they can provide grants, they can be involved in multiple different pathways. But I think that in an incubator, what they're saying is that we care about small business because they're not giving the money to initiatives that have already scaled up. They're ready to experiment, that they're ready to take risks. I think there's a commitment that's slightly different than some of the other initiatives. And a commitment to co-locating people that they think will help each other out. So it's being an active participant. Wren, would you have something to add to that? Or?
Yeah, no, not a lot. I think it's a very public commitment as well, where there's often grants and things like that. It can be publicized, but often it's over quietly. This is a very obvious statement that there's a building. Something's happening.
Yeah, something tangible.
Is there a significant amount of government funding going into these incubators?
Greg? Yeah, we're seeing them actually come up quite a bit. And what's really interesting is you'll see them almost start up around the same time. So these 3 that we're looking at have come up very, very close in time to each other. So temporality is actually something that we're very interested in looking and seeing if clusters of these incubators arise at the same time. The other is that we're going to see that it's a strategy that perhaps may diffuse rather rapidly too within a rural context, and that's something we're certainly going to be watching over the next couple of years. It's a great question.
So if I can comment, just so you get an idea of scale, our investment